A presentation of Solution Tree.
I have to admit, I love this community, but I like the fact that we really are a team. That is the reason why this school is successful and why I like being here, because I really like the people I work with.
Teams and collaboration are fundamental to professional learning communities. But what exactly do these terms mean? In this program, we'll explore collaboration in detail and see how different kinds of teams work.
The way that we define a team is that it's a group of people who are working interdependently to achieve a common goal for which they are mutually accountable. And there are some very important terms in there. Interdependence is a key term. If people don't need each other, rely on each other, and depend on each other, they're not going to be a team. So we have to ask, what can we do to create interdependent relationships? Without a goal, you can't be a team. And if it's a goal that only one of us really needs to contribute to in order for us to achieve it, you're not really a team. It's a goal for which you're mutually accountable. So we think those terms, interdependence, common goal, and mutual accountability, are critical to the team concept. Collaboration is a systematic process in which the adults in our building engage in constant collective inquiry and action research that's designed to ultimately impact their practice in order to get better results. Co-laboring, collaboration is more than just being congenial.
In professional learning communities, we try to employ the strategies of being simultaneously loose and tight. There's some behaviors that we're just tight about, that we insist upon. We're tight about the school's vision, the values of the school, the learning mission, and we're loose about how we might go about achieving that mission and how we might operate within the value system of the school.
It's always been a nice school, it's always been a nice community, and we've always been very nice to each other, but we didn't really talk frequently about what really mattered. And while I think we had the best interest of students at heart, we didn't really know how to act on that. And one of the things that really kind of focused us, we didn't make AYP one year, and we didn't make it for students with disabilities in math. And we did a series of meetings through the day with teachers, and they kind of looked at it that was math problem and that was special ed's problem. And what we really did kind of with those meetings was kind of begin the movement towards it's our problem because they're all our kids. And it's really kind of that focus, I think, that's changed. I think we wanted to be able to do that. I think we'd like to be able to do that, but we didn't know how to be able to do that.
Collaboration is definitely a means to an end, and the actual end is student performance itself.
We think collaboration is not an innate skill that teachers have, so there's certain steps that the leaders can put in place in order to generate high levels of collaboration in a very timely way. The first step is to embed collaboration into the routine practices of the school. That is to assign everyone to a team where the members of that team have an innate focus on learning.
Each school's needs are a little different, so team structure will vary from school to school.
Well, we have three types of teams. The first team would, of course, be our departments. And so you could say that they were our horizontal and vertical teams because we have two grade levels. So you have 7th grade teams, 8th grade teams, but then we combine them at least once a week for 7th and 8th grade vertical teaming. The second type of team is our interdisciplinary teams. And these are our teams that consist of the core subject areas like language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies. And the unique feature about our school is that on A days, those interdisciplinary teams have built in the master schedule 90 minutes where they can have their planning time all together. And then on B days, the departments that I just previously described get to meet. And there's another level of teams, and I call these not teams but cadres. cadres are all about that continuous improvement cycle.
In each grade level, we have houses, and within each house, we have teams of teachers. And on each team, we have our core academic teachers. So we have 2 teams at each grade level. And then our elective teachers, we pull together as a team as well.
Once they've been assigned to a team, we want every team to be provided with protected time to collaborate on a weekly basis if possible.
The study that was done by the United States Department of Education, Prisoners of Time, it made a point very clearly in there that we need to make providing time for teachers to collaborate a real priority to help improve instruction. Unfortunately, at most schools in America, the case is that the message gets sent, well, somehow squeeze this in on your own time. So what we've done here in our school is we've gone to a banked minute system, and it's a matter of adding a few minutes on to 4 days of the week and then buying back that time in a banked minutes approach on 1 day of the week. And so we needed to do, frankly, quite a bit of PR with the community to let them know what it is we had in mind and the reasons why we thought it was a really good idea, and then also to provide the parents with some viable options should childcare be a real issue for them.
Well, as parents and as a parent community, we had an opportunity to think about that question as to whether early release on Wednesdays for staff to get together and work on their curriculum was a good thing for us as families and as parents and with our children. And I don't feel the curriculum here would be as strong if it was one person working on their own curriculum. So I wholeheartedly wanted to see that continue year after year.
And it's been very, very successful for us here and has been the single biggest avenue for providing teachers collaboration time.
Everyone agrees. Time for collaboration is important. And it's also hard to find and protect that time.
It's hard to find time. So one of the things that we're constantly talking about, is this the best way to have staff development, or is this the best time for teams to meet? What we find is that that time is so valuable because it strengthens the curriculum across the board for students and also makes the curriculum much more consistent for every child.
So they need to show that they understand what comparing means and what contrasting means.
We constantly are looking at our schedule, constantly looking at our use of time and valuing our time. If you get a team of teachers together to work, that time is as precious as gold.
Through the collaborative process, the leaders need to make sure that the teams are collaborating about the right thing. So they give them a series of learning questions to engage in collective inquiry.
Here's an interdisciplinary 8th grade team tackling the first fundamental question of a professional learning community. What do we want all students to learn? They're discussing how to teach about Venn diagrams across the curriculum.
How could curriculum instruction enhance text instruction? And the math teachers, y'all shared with me that y'all had some new information, a new lesson that you'd like to share with the language teachers.
Okay. Well, this was a Venn diagram, and say, how are these problems alike? You know, and put them in the middle, and those are usually the numbers. We were talking about Venn diagrams in our team meeting because it is something that the history department uses, the language uses, science uses it, math uses it, and it's an excellent tool. Math may go into it a little deeper than what everybody else takes it, but if they're just using it and introducing it, it's a great thing for us. Then we don't have to go over the basics in our class. We can take it to that next step.
While the curriculum standard may already be in place, the details of how those standards are addressed are clarified by the team.
They say it in y'all's class and see it in y'all's class. Oh, this must be important.
Sometimes teachers or administrators suggest to us, well, we don't really need teachers to sit down together and talk about what it is students should learn. All we need to do is hand them the state standards and tell them to go teach, because the question, learn what, has already been answered by the state. But what we've discovered is that if teachers are interpreting those state standards working in isolation, they can come up with very different interpretations of what the standards mean. And if they don't have common agreement on what the standard means or how important it is, they can't have common pacing. If they can't have common pacing, they can't have common assessments. But the biggest single reason that we want to engage people in this dialogue is that because it generates a greater sense of commitment and internal accountability. when teachers sit down together and look each other in the eye and say to one another, so we've agreed then, right? We will teach this concept in the first 6 weeks, and they all sign off on that. We've just increased the probability that that skill will actually be taught exponentially beyond just handing those teachers the state standards. We're responsible and accountable to our teammates. We make commitments to each other, and we honor those commitments because we were involved in making them. We feel a sense of ownership.
This accelerated chemistry team is working together to analyze the results of a common formative assessment. They're addressing the second fundamental question: how do we know if our students are learning?
And I went through on all the data here, and I put arrows pointing to the questions that were under 80%, and I put stars next to the questions that were under 60%. This kills me every year.
Are they combustion?
I don't know why they can't get...
I think they run out of time, get frustrated, move on, and they don't come back to it, I guess.
Usually in combustion reactions, we're burning some type of hydrocarbon that has only carbon and hydrogen in it.
That's fine. If we want to put that in, we just change it to that to make it that's fine.
Well, this is the big clue that this is something that we need to make sure that we do a good job teaching, that we all demonstrate it, we all talk about it, and that can be a point of emphasis on a review. We give the formative assessment to the kids, we'll bring that back to our team meeting, we get immediate online feedback of how our kids did versus all the rest of the kids, and what we can do then is say, like, not only as an individual teacher, I can say, wow, my kids in Unit 2, specifically on this concept with reading solubility curves, they didn't do so well, and then hopefully you can go to other teachers in the team and say, what did you do, you know, to really help your kids succeed on this? And so it's an opportunity for a teacher to revisit what they have done in class and maybe make corrections and see what they can do better to become a better teacher with that particular concept.
I think to know if students understand.
This team of second grade teachers is working together to analyze the results of a common formative assessment and to develop an action plan based on that data.
Because in math, it's so easy to test their skills and what they can do, but it's hard to really get to that point of what do they really understand. In today's meeting, we discussed a common assessment that we'd built towards our first SMART goal for the year, which is numbers up to 1,000, and students were looking at being able to write numbers when they hear them orally, and also be able to write before and after. And it was just to get a sense for, can students write numbers to 1,000? And by looking at that pre-test, we started to notice some of the issues that students were having in understanding numbers, and also where we could help for the few students that were having great difficulties, and also where we want to build for all students to get to the next place when looking at place value. So it was really a foundational discussion for the year to help improve our practices and understand our students better and how we could help them better.
You know, with a goal that you produce, then the teachers work together to work with whatever assessments they feel are going to give them the best information, and assessments for learning as opposed to assessments of learning. So we work with the data for learning, and then that's where we then come up with the action plan to help make sure that the SMART goal is achieved.
He still really struggles with particularly the language end, the writing end.
Here's a team of 7th grade teachers collaboratively answering the question, how will we respond when students don't learn?
Daily we have common planning meetings, and those meetings contain all the core teachers in our house. So we all are familiar with the students, we're familiar with their strengths, their weaknesses, and we come together to attempt to put in place anything we need to best service the student.
What is another way to solve that? Does anybody know?
You could times 1.18 times 26, is it?
It's right. Is that correct? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
We were talking about best practices last time, and Kathy, I think you said you had a really cool box idea.
Right. And it's not.
Kathy has found a great way to represent a math concept. It seems to really help her students, so she shares the idea with the other teachers on her team.
And when I first did this, all the kids just had the poster board, and they made the box problems, and they set them up, and then they did this in pairs. A fun, and it's an easy tool that I have to help the kids understand that the box isn't voodoo or magic. It is just a proportion set up where it's got the labels on it so that you know where to put everything. It's like a fill in the blank, and it helps them immensely when they're trying to understand a word problem. And then all they had to do was turn to find the answer. And then and if it wasn't there, then they turn it again.
Because I tried to do it on paper one day, but when I flipped it, my numbers were upside down, and they were making the connection. So it's easier when you twist it.
And if they make it themselves, it's just, I don't know, it just sinks it in a little deeper.
Because I remember the first year learning the box and just teaching it one way. And the minute a kid got an assessment that had the box reversed, they were like, well, I don't know how to do this. The X is on the wrong side. And I was like, that's my fault because I've been teaching it just one way. And so that's good that you can show them how it can.
Until she actually saw it, it just really didn't make sense to her.
We monitor the work of collaborative teams through the products that those teams generate. Some people like to monitor agendas and minutes, but often that doesn't get to the heart of what teams do. So we ask teams to generate products, things like list of essential outcomes, common assessments, SMART goals. And as we monitor the quality of the products, we know that they're staying focused on the right things.
And these notebooks are basically compilations of what we do as a PLC. So for example, we put together our grade level norms. Those go into the notebook. We've decided what it is that's important for kids to know and be able to do. So we put that into the notebook, the essential learnings. We decide, okay, now we need to assess what the boys and girls should know and be able to do. How are we going to know if they really know that? We develop common assessments. Guess what? Copies of those common assessments go into the notebook. So it's a living, working document that will evolve and change over time.
So there's certain keys that teams go through, or steps rather, that they go through in order to stay the course, focused on student learning. And through that process, they just become the engine that drives the process of continuous improvement in their school.
Adopting collaboration as a way of life in schools involves cultural shifts.
When I started out a number of years ago, I was at a different school, and it was definitely you were your own in your own classroom. And excuse me, I had to do everything on my own. I had to come up with the lessons on my own. I had to interpret the curriculum on my own. I had to come up with all kinds of activities and things. And you really do feel isolated, and you start to think, is this the right way to do it? Or you have a problem and you're there left alone trying to think of it. So having somebody else, having a group where you can bounce ideas off of each other, then you really get into being able to problem solve in a very effective way, as well as being able to help each other and lift each other up and keep each other enthusiastic and excited about teaching.
In my student teaching experience, I kind of felt often alone, but here I came in and I never felt isolated. I never felt as if I was in my room all by myself. People came in to talk to me, and I could go, and people gave me a warm reception and, would hear my ideas. So I think that's been, one of the things that's made me and, as well as our team, I think, feel really successful as far as how we plan and meet the needs of our kids.
The shift has been to, instead of just share materials, it's to ask ourselves honestly, what could I do better as I go back and reteach that skill? Or what are you doing in your classroom that's helping your students learn? We are now looking at all of the attributes that each teacher brings to the team and asking for those to be shared with everyone. So it's much more of there's an honesty, there's an openness, there's not a fear in sharing, in coming out and saying, I didn't do that so well. What can I do better next time?
I cannot tell you how much they helped me, how much they supported me, how much they backed me up when something would happen in my classroom that I didn't know how to handle. They were there for me. They told me when I was doing things wrong, and they nudged me in the right direction.
Those schools with stronger collaborative cultures
have also shown stronger gains, greater gains in student achievement. So the two are tracking side by side. As the collaborative culture improves, as the collaborative culture strengthens, so do the levels of student achievement.
I usually seat my kids in rows. I'm used to rows. I like rows. One of my teachers on my tribe, she wasn't doing rows. She can't stand rows. She has a very orange personality, very out there, very wild. And she had her kids in groups. And I just said, Patsy, I don't understand how you're going to have your kids in groups. There's just so much other noise going on. And she said, but you have to think about if that's positive noise or if that's negative noise. And this year, I have put my kids into groups of 3, and that's how they sit every day. And on the retention scale, the things that students teach other students, they retain 95% better than anything that I'll ever tell them. And so when they're talking, I have to realize that some of that is really positive noise, and they're explaining something in their own language that I might not be able to explain as well to them. It's about teaching smarter instead of harder.